All right, guys, we're here live with our group conversation about building versus buying a precision rifle. This whole thing precipitated from a conversation I had with some friends that we were kicking around the idea of how the decision points guys have to make when they're looking at buying a gun. A friend of mine was looking at buying his first gun, and it was like, well, do I build a gun? Do I buy a factory gun, or do I, work with a custom company and get something custom? So I thought, the guys I normally talk to are now right in front of us, all right here. Wojcik has sort of been my gun daddy for a few years. He is a prior service Marine Corps sniper and now runs his own company called Modern Day Sniper, where he's been awesome at teaching dudes how to shoot for a while now. Alex Hartman is another friend of mine that I've gone to for plenty of advice on shooting. He runs a training company called Ridgeline out of New Hampshire. Matt Wilson is another friend of mine that I've often called and asked crazy questions about Ruger rifles. And the reason I thought he would be really fun to have on this conversation is because Ruger pretty much brought the democratization of, they democratized the precision rifle with the RPR. And it's going to be hard not to talk about precision rifle shooting right now without talking about PRS and the effect that competition has had on precision rifle shooting. And then Mark Gordon, Short Action Customs, custom rifle builder of great reputation. This is my first time talking to Mark, so I'm excited to get his views on a lot of stuff that we're gonna talk about. Now, Mark has made some cool tools to help guys build guns, in addition to building guns for guys, very high performance sniper rifle systems. Now, you guys might also be asking where Ryan Castle is. He had a family emergency, so he couldn't join us, and Alex was kind enough to step in and help us out. So, Ryan, we hope everything's going all right for you and your family. And with that, we can start talking about guns. So, I guess the first topic that I wanted to ask guys about, and I should say that we're going to try to keep this as loose as possible. I don't want to sort of den mother anybody and cut people off and, go around the room and make sure everybody gets a chance to talk. Everybody's pretty good about, if you got something to contribute, just jump in. And the first question I'm just going to throw out to the panel here is, who should build a gun?
Who should build a gun? Like what? Build a gun is in like from the ground up by themselves, or like have somebody like Mark build a custom rifle?
Yeah, I'm thinking like if you're watching this podcast or this discussion right now, you might be thinking about buying a gun or building a gun or buying a gun, and maybe is there a guy that's ready, who should be building a gun in your opinion? Who's ready to build a gun in your opinion right now? And how do I ask myself, hey, am I ready to jump in and start figuring out what bolt I should, what action I should get and what barrel I should get, and do I understand what threading I'm going to need, and can I just go watch a whole bunch of YouTube videos and figure that stuff out on my own, or is there something more that guys should really know and be comfortable with before they jump into building their own gun?
When I talk to customers, I want them to be serious about the sport. I mean, it's a big investment, time-wise, financially. So if they're getting ready to buy a custom rifle, I would like them to at least go shooting, try it a couple times first, kind of figure out if it's something they want to get into. And then if they're dead serious, they've already gone a couple times, they've been loaning rifles and using loaner rifles from people, then that's a good time to start looking at, building a rifle. But, like the Ruger RPR, I'm just going to throw it out there. I mean, it's a great rifle to get people in the sport. It's got, a lot of nice features and stuff. So it's a good way to get people out there shooting without having to, lose them as a customer or potential, competitor or someone who's shooting matches. It at least gets them out there and gets them shooting, but they can kind of establish their own opinions and kind of figure out what level they want to jump into.
You're hired. I mean, no, I mean, like I want to build my ultimate bolt action rifle. But the fact is, at least for me, I don't know the combination, the specific minutia that I would necessarily want if I were just to say, next Monday I'm going to start a parts list and I'm going to put stuff together. I'm not there. So in my mind, it's often just like a newer shooter asking what caliber or what scope or which gun. If someone doesn't know what they want and why they want it, it's probably a step too far to go in and just start ordering parts.
Mm.
That's a good point. That's something like what Mark said right off the bat. When people ask me that question all the time, my first question, and I hate to answer a question with a question, but I always have to say, what's your budget? What are you trying to do? And what do you want to spend? Because that's really going to dictate the direction that you go on the level of your build, right? But if you're going to do like a full custom job, like something that you'd get from Mark, obviously that's going to be a higher cost than that of if you're piecing it together yourself. You're going to have less cost involved in that. But then you have to say, okay, well, do I have all of the tools and all the things necessary to do that? So building, having a custom rifle built, absolutely, man, it's a huge investment, and somebody is going to put a lot of time, effort, and energy into building that rifle for you. And you really do have to know what it is that you want to do with it. I get the wide variety. I get hunters, I get enthusiasts, and I get competitors that show up to classes. So I do deal with a wide variety of different, rifle mission statements, I guess, if you could call it that, for different customers. So I could be recommending it all to everybody. It's just dependent on what the mission is and where you want to go with it.
So I guess what considerations should we be talking about, or should guys be thinking about if they're going to be building their own rifle at this point?
So first, I think would be what is their level of expertise just as a machinist? One is going to kind of start where they can do things. And what is their level of, like, what tools they have, and then what sort of time do they want to invest in it, right? Like for me, we're partnered with a high performance driving school, so we have a lot of kind of like racing analogies, right? So I look at us as the race car drivers, right? Like we're going to slide into that F1 car and do the best work we can, but a driver knows everything about that car from front to rear, right? Because he's going to want to know exactly the performance he's looking for so that he can kind of run his best race. And so when I look at that, you got to be real honest with yourself. Like, are you doing it because you like to tinker and you want to sort of like learn something or get more involved? Or are you looking for that high performance piece of equipment that you can just count on? And for me and a lot of the guys that I train, we're not looking to, like, we want to know everything about it so we can diagnose when something goes wrong. We can perform, take it to the razor's edge of its performance capability. But at the end of the day, like when it goes south, like I just want to turn around and pull it into pit lane and call Mark, you know what I mean?
And the other thing is, I think people just want to be a part of the process. That's why we have so many people that want to supply their own parts. I mean, we could probably save them money by buying everything through us. Plus, we can make sure that the parts that we're going to use are going to match up. We get a lot of times where people want to supply a barrel of stock and action, and then the stock's not inletted for the action, and the stock, the barrel channel needs to open up, and the bottom metal inlet's not right. And that's okay. We can handle that, but I think people just want to be a part of the process and supply stuff. However, there's a lot of stuff to have to know. There's a lot of nuance behind that. So.
Yeah, we're in a situation right now where, it's a gear race. So there's every year this sport is growing exponentially, and every year you're having new components come out, new parts and pieces and things like that. Like stuff like Mark, like you're saying, like the barrel channel stuff, that's a big deal. So making sure that fits, because then that's also going to add more cost that might perhaps be unexpected, right? So hey, there's more cost involved because I have to widen out the barrel channel and all this other stuff. So identifying like what it is that you want in feature set and what you're trying to do with the rifle. Because if you're going to build a gun on your own, you need specific tools for it, right? So If you're just looking to go, all right, cool, man, I'm going to build my own gun, and I'm just kind of an enthusiast, and I might go through a barrel every other year. It might not be the highest and best use of your funds to invest in the tools to get that done. So that's my take on it. Like I have all the tools because I'm swapping barrels all the time, and I'm doing work on guns all the time. So it makes sense for me to purchase that as an investment because it's a tool, right? Just like any other mechanic or any other woodworker or anything like that. So look at like is this something that you're going to be doing all the time? And if so, then yeah, you might want to jump in and build your own gun. So that way you can see what it's all about.
Guys, let me just stop for 1 second because it looks like we're populating this thing right now. We had a little bit of a glitch and we're just getting a whole bunch of people joining us on the Zoom side. So I apologize. We're underway and we've got 4 guests right now. We're talking about building versus buying a precision gun. And I guess I am your host, Rob Curtis from Recoil Magazine. And I've got Kalen Wojcik, who's going to wave so we know who Kalen is. Prior service Marine, sniper, instructor, and now runs his own shop called Modern Day Sniper. And we'll get to that later because there's lots of cool instruction available from Kalen remotely too. Alex Hartman is another instructor that I've gone to for help many times. Prior service Marine as well, and also a Army guy too at one point, if I recall. So he is also an end user and competitor and lover of bolt guns. And we've got Matt Wilson from Ruger, who is representing the factory side of this argument or conversation, if you will. Matt's company, Ruger, brought the RPR to market, and that really democratized the precision rifle market for a lot of people and got a lot of guys into PRS that otherwise would have been fumbling in the dark trying to find the right gun. And then we've got Mark Gordon from Short Action Customs, who is a creator of fine rifles on the custom side, and also a guy that has figured out how to make tools to help guys build their own rifles. So he's walking a pretty fine line there, which shows his investment in the platform in a big way. So he's willing to help guys out as well as, hey, if you don't want to do it yourself, he's there to get rifles built up for you. So these are the 4 cats that are talking to us. Unfortunately, Ryan Castle wasn't able to join us. He had an emergency, so Alex jumped in to give us to save the day. So we are already sort of on our running down our list of topics here, and I think Kalen was just talking about what he thought the average shooter should probably be considering before throwing down and building their own rifle. Now, we should also just make sure everybody understands the impetus for this conversation is the availability and over the last 5 years, probably the excitement that has come up with pre-fit barrels and barrel nut systems that let guys build guns themselves. So although those systems have been around for a long time, for whatever reason, it just seems like a few years ago, interest in those systems exploded. Maybe it had something to do with PRS, guys getting sick of changing out their 6mm barrels or waiting on gunsmiths to do it. But there's always been this heavy argument about, well, man, barrel nuts are never going to be as accurate as my factory shouldered barrel and yada yada yada. So no, it's something we might get into that conversation later. Kind of a religious topic for a lot of people, but at the moment, yeah, we're still talking about what considerations the average shooter should have before they decide to build their own rifle. So I'll throw it back out there.
I think with the pre-fit barrel, the biggest thing is, people just don't want to have to down their rifle for so long. I mean, I think that's where the original desire and popularity of them came about. I don't really think there's any performance advantage to them. You get them quicker, and I think that's what it kind of boils down to. So I think with the National Rifle League and PRS taking off the way they have, that's probably what's driving the pre-fit market the most, from what we've seen.
It did cause major upset. So
it did or didn't, Kalen?
It did, because now you've introduced this totally new concept that Now all of a sudden I really don't have to, like Mark said, you can get it faster, right? As long as you're competent with basic hand tools and you can follow instructions, you can swap a barrel out, right? If you have proper tools.
Yeah, and from a competitive side, that means I think guys that are competing heavily would have to swap their barrels out in the middle of a season, right? And I don't know how they did that. Did they use a couple of guns, or they just sort of limped along with a barrel toward the end of the season?
Typically have multiple rifles or backups.
Yeah.
Or they'll get multiple barrels per rifle and just swap them out themselves or keep them on hand. You know, some people break all three of them at a time, throw one barrel on, and then keep the other ones ready to go. But yeah, there's a couple ways that people do it. But a lot of people usually have a backup rifle because if something goes down in a match, you know, I think it's against the rules to change rifles in the middle of the match just for the sake of trying something different. But if you have a hard down, I think you can, you know, it's good to have a backup. Plus, helping other shooters out. You got some guy who has a Ruger RPR that breaks or something. You know, you can open one of your nice custom rifles.
Well, I mean, clearly we like the barrel nut design, and that's what the Ruger Precision Rifle has. And to his credit, I think the engineer who really piloted that gun and shepherded it through our program, you know, really fought hard to keep that barrel nut compatible with an AR barrel wrench. So not that I'll go advocating people swapping barrels all the time. It's certainly within the realm of reason, and we've seen just a groundswell of prefits, you know, for the Ruger Precision Rifle platform. There's, I think, about a dozen companies now you can get all sorts of chamberings for it, and clearly it's an important value to the rifle shooting community.
Why did it take, or what is it that you guys think caused that to happen in the past, you know, I don't know, 5-6 years? I mean, especially in the last 3 years, I've seen a lot of companies start coming out, like looking towards pre-chambered barrels and prefits.
Demand.
Straight up. Yeah, a lot of platforms have come on, and that they all the platforms allow for it, but they encourage it. It's almost like a start here, and then you can add as you go, right? So, you know, the RPR is a perfect example. I mean, there's almost a recipe for them now at this point. It's like you get it, you swap the barrel, you do a sequence handguard and a mag pull buttstock, and you go run. It's almost like that simple. And when you look at just the industry side of things with the PRS and NRL exploding how it has, creating, you know, actual ROI for these companies and, you know, existing sort of smaller shops. I mean, precision rifle has always kind of been the bastard child of the industry for a long, long time. And I remember coming up as a sniper and going to companies and asking for, you know, certain pieces of kit and equipment, and they would turn to me and laugh and say, well, yeah, great idea, but there's 300 of you. Like, I don't care. You know, and now that there's, you know, 10,000 people that are across the country that are shooting club matches or national level matches, now the ROI is there for them to put this out. And, you know, again, a lot of those people are transitioning from that AR world or background where you do get to roll your own, you do get to sort of customize it as you go. And so they're very familiar with that process.
I guess what's interesting is that when I start thinking about it, I think that all these guns all came from a hunting background, really. And that's a pretty, you look at hunters and they shoot what, 10, 12 rounds a year, something like that. So they're not wearing barrels out. They're not changing lots of things over time. And, you know, up until the advent of PRS and really, you know, the explosion of precision competition. Yeah. Like Alex said, I think that market, you know, wasn't underserved, just wasn't there. And now we're seeing that market explode and really get served. Does that seem like a fair way to look at that, Matt?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to all of that. The other part of this mix that we see is, you know, you go back 5, 6, 7 years, people didn't shoot beyond 300 yards. And there were 300 of us who knew that getting to 1,000 yards was well within reach. But it was a small group, and I think it was unattainable to a lot of people just on the information side. You couldn't go to a sporting goods store, buy a box of ammo, buy a scope, slap it on a factory rifle, and be prepared for that challenge. And now you can walk into a store, walk out with a factory gun, a regular optic that's behind the counter, and a couple boxes of ammo, and you're there. And now you've got that little taste of it. And now you know that 6.5 Creedmoor's awesome, but man, there's a lot of other flavors out there, and maybe I wanna twist a 6XT because, well, that'll be fun. No one even thought of that 5 years ago. It was a very small group of people playing that game.
Plus, when you think about the manufacturers, I mean, when it comes to chambering barrels and sending them out, if you have a barrel nut system, you have way more room to headspace the barrel. So it's way less critical. You know, you have a lot bigger window that the headspace needs to be in. You can just send it off and it's going to be fine. With a conventional shouldered barrel, when you send those out, I mean, you've got 2, maybe 3 thousandths at the most. And so, I mean, from the manufacturing standpoint, you can produce way more efficiently going that way. And I think that's what kind of Savage has improved, you know, over the years, and, you know, Ruger and other systems use barrel nuts.
I started shooting a barrel nut system in 2013 on a mousing field, and which I believe, me personally, I love that action. I think it's amazing. It's got a lot of really, really awesome features on it. And I had that rifle with the intent of, and it also has a swappable bolt face. So I can go from a short action Magnum to a standard face cartridge of 473. So I had one barrel chambered in 7 SAUM, and then I had another barrel chambered in 6mm Creedmoor, and that was it. So like if I was going to a shooting match that had big wide open spaces or lots of wind, I'd throw the 7 SAUM barrel on there, zero it, and it's done. It's so easy. And then if I had a close range match, or, you know, a match that required a little bit more speed, or more rapid target acquisition and prosecution, I go with the 6 Creedmoor, right? It's just, you know, recoil management and whatnot. And it literally takes 15 minutes if you have the right tools. You can do it on the back of your pickup truck. So there's a lot of convenience to it, but at the same time, like, you can't be ADD about it. It's like, there's a process to it. And there's been lots of dudes that have like under torqued barrel nuts and had barrel nuts come off or come loose in mid match, and then you're totally screwed. But those are the pitfalls that you could experience if you went that route, because you definitely have to pay attention to what it is that you're doing.
So what do guys, I mean, back to that question about, you know, the considerations that guys should have from a practical standpoint. You guys have all messed with these guns, and what do guys need to really consider as far as calibers, as far as components that they're looking at? Is there any advice that you want to throw out there for guys making this decision? Maybe they've already decided to build their own gun. You know, what do they need to think about before they start, you know, when they start, you know, looking for stuff on the internet?
Let's say ammo, you know, if they're going to be hand loading, if they're going to be buying factory ammo. I mean, that's probably one of the first questions we'll ask, because if they don't have the possibility of hand loading, then they're pretty much, you know, limited to a couple different options. So that's usually the route that we go, you know, what their intentions are on that. And then, you know, what kind of performance they're looking for. I mean, 6mm are great. They're flat. They don't recoil that much, but, you know, they don't put a big enough or as big of a signature down range on targets. Or if you miss, you know, and you hit a wet berm or something, it's not going to, you know, blow up a lot of dirt as much as, you know, larger calibers and stuff. So even if 6mm have all these benefits, it's not always the right route to go for people, just because it's you know, faster and flatter and such. So.
Yeah, and we should probably also keep in mind that we're talking a lot about PRS and competition shooters right now, but, you know, there's plenty of law enforcement guys that are running these sniper systems as well, and they're facing these same questions when they're trying to save money on agency buys and things like that, and they might sort of try to build their own guns for, you know, to save some money.
Well, so with the cartridge or with the type of rifle, I think I always say, like, what are you trying to do with it, right? What are you trying to do with the platform? Are you trying to build a hunting rifle? Are you trying to build like a kind of hybrid hunting rifle that you might not want to pack it really far, but it will fill a role of both hunting as well as, you know, occasional competitive or recreational use? Or are you a sheep hunter and you want the lightest rifle possible with the same level of performance? Because that's a whole different ball of wax, right? There's a whole different gamut. And then what kind of like with regard to cartridge and from a hunting standpoint, man, there's so much misconception out there from a hunting standpoint. I do a lot of hunting, and there's so many misconceptions out there about bullet design, bullet composition, what cartridge is going to be able to kill whatever animal. And so that's, again, I ask them, hey, if you're going to be hunting, all right, what are you hunting for? What are you trying to use this rifle for? And so these questions start to kind of drive the thought process when it comes to selecting components and cartridges.
I mean, there's aside, I guess we're also talking about, why do guys want to build these guns? Are they trying to get more performance out of them, or are they trying to save some money, or are they trying to do both? Can you do both, Mark?
I think everything is a compromise. I mean, I think the compromise with the barrel nut systems are, the whole purpose is this, value. Typically, you're not downing the rifles long, but typically they're just less expensive setups. There's less labor on the manufacturing side, so there's that, like I say, stigma about it. But I feel like they're just typically lower cost solutions, and because a lot of the cut rifle barrels, which I'm not trying to open up this can of worms, but I think cut rifling, that's the best way to make barrels. Those manufacturers typically aren't offering, pre-fit barrel nut systems and stuff. So I think it boils down to just, barrel nuts offer a greater value. I don't think there's really any performance gain to them.
I would agree with that, man, because a lot of people, I would show up with that barrel nut rifle, and people would be like, "What? Why would you be shooting that?" And it's like, dude, it's no different. It's just it's a rifle barrel attached to the action or the receiver in just a different way than a traditional shouldered barrel. So it's not going anywhere, and it's not, as long as the threads are cut appropriately and properly and they match, then, and it keeps everything in concentricity and in line, then it's a rifle. It's no different.
I want to throw something out there real quick. Rob, you brought up the fact that law enforcement might be doing this. If you are a law enforcement guy and you are going to do this, ensure that you have the appropriate armor certificate to do so if it's a live gun going on the street. There's a liability issue there. Again, not saying that, like Kalen said, if you follow instructions, no harm, no foul. Okay, but when those guns need to go live, it's because the situation has deteriorated to a point where the only way out of it is through an instant kinetic solution. So if you are going to do it and it's going to be examined, and there's a huge amount of liability attached to that, make sure you have the appropriate armor cert for that platform and to do that level of maintenance or improvement.
And that does not include Cabela's, Sportsman's Warehouse, Dick's, because like Alex is laughing because he knows it's true. We've had that happen before at law enforcement courses, man, and that's 100% not okay, man. There's, like you said, there's just way too much liability in there.
Right, and the thing where people,
hey guys, I want to introduce everybody again because we've got some people that have just joined us. So bear with me for about station identification. Kalen is our, we've got two SMEs here that are on the user end of things here, Kalen and Alex, and they're also sniper instructors, both prior service Marines, and both have their own training companies. Kalen runs a company called Modern Day Sniper, and Alex is Ridgeline Shooting. Both are guys I've leaned on heavily for advice in the past, and I'm grateful that they've joined us. Also, I got Mark Gordon and Matt Wilson sort of on the industrial side of things. Mark builds custom rifles. His company is called Short Action Customs, and Matt is a program manager for a little rifle company called Ruger. And I'm stoked that they joined us as well. And so they are going to be talking about the factory side of things and the custom manufacturing side of things. Sorry, guys. Carry on. I think, Mark, I cut you off. Sorry, buddy.
No, I was just saying with barrel nuts, they're not as cut and dry and easy. I mean, you have to have a barrel wrench, a nut wrench, of course. The best way is to also secure the barrel in a vise. And then you also need to secure the action, because really the only thing you want turning is the nut. You don't want the action to move with the nut. I mean, you get in galling situations and stuff, but so then you also have to make sure your headspace is correct every single time you take it on and off. So with a shouldered barrel, in my opinion, it's superior just because it's going to headspace the same way every time. It can't do anything but lock up. I mean, it's the simplest, easiest solution to the job. So as long as the machine works good to go, a conventional shoulder barrel is going to be superior for simplicity, repeatability, and just, consistency for the shooter. So, everything is a compromise. I mean, the barrel nuts you can get, the barrels you get, at a good price. They're all over the place. A lot of people are doing them, but the compromise is you do need tools. You do need to have some know-how, and there's a tolerance for headspace gauges. If you've got headspace gauge from company X and the headspace gauge from company Y for a 6.5 Creedmoor, there might be 2,000s between the two. So there's just a lot of little tiny things that people need to consider when thinking that the barrel nut system is, the end all be all. So.
And I want to jump in there too. Sorry, Alex. Let me just throw down on that as well and say, Mark, that even when you're looking at manufacturers, third-party manufacturers of these barrels, because you've got an action company making the action, you've got a barrel company making the barrel. How do you know that even if they're, how do you know that they're going to headspace properly when you put them together?
I mean, you don't know for 100% sure. I mean, there's a company based out of England that everybody thinks that every action is built the same. Mm-hmm. That you can just ship out barrels, and we've had multiple rifles that we've done barrels for that there's massive discrepancies in headspace that have gone back to a variation in the action. So we always tell our customers, we really want to have the action in the barrel and the bolt, because that's the only way to know for sure. I mean, anything else is just an educated guess. And we keep Excel spreadsheets where every time I do my final quality assurance inspection, I'm documenting all the numbers. We compile them, we review them to make sure there's no outliers, but you just don't know unless you have all the parts there. So you're just playing a numbers game on hoping that you only get one out of 1-200 that have an issue, and you just take care of them. So that's it's not a slam dunk every time.
So even these companies that are talking about pre-fit barrels and barrel nut systems after the fact, I know there's a couple of companies recently that have come out with systems that they have approved vendors for the barrels for these actions, and they say, just go ahead and order a barrel from company X, and it's going to mate up and shoulder up on our actions because we hold a 1 thou tolerance or a 1 millionth I don't know, whatever you want to call it. So how much weight can we put on those claims there that you can just spin a barrel onto an action and you're good to go?
They say the same thing about chassis. If you got a Remington 700 chassis, you just bolts right in, and there's just real world things that happen. Murphy pops his head in all the time. So, they have those guarantees, and I'm sure those companies, will back it up if there's an issue. But, we've been building rifles 10 years full time now, and every single company that we've dealt with has let stuff out. Everybody's human. We make mistakes all the time too. So it's not 100% bomb-proof. People do let stuff out that shouldn't get out. It's just the way manufacturing goes. So they can have their guarantees, and their guarantees are more to, take care of something if it happens. It's not to be this iron fist, there's never going to be a problem, period, because that's just unrealistic.
Well, and you won't know if you don't measure it. So the beauty of a barrel nut system or a pre-fit barrel nut system is that if the chamber is cut towards the minimum headspace end, then your assembly can probably tend toward the min spec for headspace, which is generally desirable. But without that system in place and a way to measure it, like real gauges at the headspace length you're trying to achieve, you won't know what you have if you're putting it together, and you won't know what you have or get with a shoulder barrel when you assemble it either.
So what I'm hearing is you need to have everything in hand. And you have to have qualified people to know what to look for. You have to check everything, with gauges. I mean, numbers are great, but you need a go and a no-go is the most beautiful thing in the world. It goes or it doesn't go. We use them for ring gauges, for threads, for internal and external. We use them for headspace. I mean, it's basically dummy proof.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, but that's kind of where your your action wrench sort of came in. It was kind of like the whole intent of it is you offer that sort of like, switch barrel ability with using those shouldered barrels and like keeping a record of the customer's dimensions on hand so you can CNC them out and send multiple barrels to the same gun, and it becomes as simple as sort of a pre-fit barrel swap over, right?
Right. Yeah, that's our goal. That's what, we spend a lot of time investing in, different metrology methods, and we create our own custom tools to measure headspace and to document all these things. But, at the end of the day, we prefer to have everything. But, we started all of our barrel vices and action wrenches just because we're doing it every single day, and we've always been using other people's products. So, there's issues that we had, whether it's, slow and clunky or just not robust enough. So that's, there was a couple main reasons why we decided to build our own tools. But yeah, one of them is to be able to, for customers that are comfortable, and mature enough as adults to know what's right and wrong to be able to work on their own foot.
So let's sort of get into a little bit of the gear here for guys. What kind of tool bench and what kind of kit do you need to build a precision rifle? And even, whether we're talking about a pre-fit or we're talking about, I guess we're not talking about machining. We're not talking about gunsmithing. But if guys want to get into this at the level that we're talking about here with either shouldering, buying a pre-shouldered barrel or a barrel nut system, what do guys need to buy?
I'll let Kalen start off because my list.
Forward Action Customs action wrench right there.
Yeah.
All right.
No, man. So Mark, you make the best tools, dude. You really do. The modular barrel vise is awesome. That thing's awesome. You can interchange it with the multi-base that Mark makes between the scope level, the final scope level, and then the barrel vise. It's got modular bushings, so you can use it for all different kinds of stuff. And then the action wrench is pretty rad too, because I do shoot a lot of different actions, and it's nice to be able to just have the head insert for that particular action that you need. Like, you got to have a torque wrench. It's obviously torque wrench that's calibrated appropriately for your barrel itself, which can be considered a specialty tool. Like, you can go out and spend like $200 on a torque wrench. It'll take you up to 150 foot-pounds. So like I said earlier, like, unless you're using that thing for multiple purposes, that's a significant purchase, right? So you got the barrel wrench, the action wrench, the torque wrench. You need some small hand tools, right, for Torx heads and things like that. It can be somewhat extensive if you're going to go all out. That it can be expensive. So just be aware of that. And again, that's where that borderline comes. Like, hey, am I going to do this like once every other year or even once a year? Well, okay, that's another $600 to $800 in tools that you have to buy just to make that happen. So, it's definitely, there's definitely cheaper options out there, but at the same time, man, it's like, I subscribe to the buy once, cry once. And, when I look at the craftsmanship that Mark puts into his tools, it's literally unparalleled. This is not like a barrel vise that you're going to get from like, Midway USA. Seriously. It's like, it's really well done and it works really well. And I'm to the point now where time is really valuable. And so I want to be able to come into my shop and know exactly what I need and be able to throw a barrel vise on there with the appropriate bushing, and I can get my job done in 15 minutes. Right. And that, for me, that means a lot because like, I don't have a whole lot. I don't have as much time as I used to have. So that makes a difference for me.
Saw this video of Jacob Bynum from Rifles Only. He was installing a barrel on his AI. So he gets this crescent wrench, clamps on his barrel, and just starts beating it with a hammer, to break the barrel loose, unscrews it, screws his new barrel in, beats the, crescent wrench again. So assuming you're not installing stuff like that, which...
How many foot-pounds per swing do you think he's doing?
Right. Depends on the hammer weight. So...
So Ted Courageous from American Rifle Company came out to the range a couple weeks ago, and he assembled an Archimedes action, and he had a Criterion barrel there, and he had a box end wrench milled into slots for a box end wrench milled into the barrel near the tenon. So all he had to do is slide that on there, put his foot on it, apply torque to the action, and it's done. So, it's like, you can do it that way. You sure can do it that way. And then we take the rifle out and it shoots like that. So tomato, I guess. And it all just comes down to like Mark said, how well do you know your components? How familiar are you with this process? Because it can go, you can blow up your gun, man. You can really hurt yourself. We've seen that happen before too.
Well, there's we touched on it earlier, and that was we touched on the topic of assembling your barrel nut system and talking about what needs to be held in place. And I'm guilty of throwing my action wrench in a vise, holding my barrel in my hand, and then pulling, torquing my barrel nut down with the other hand. And it should be easy, but every time, I kind of have to game that barrel nut a little bit, because I got the headspace gauge in there, and no matter what I do, it's gonna tighten that a little bit more than I want to. So you kind of got to back it off a little bit here and there. And I'm like, man, I wish there was an easier way or a more intuitive way to do this. And obviously, I'm doing it the way that I can at the moment. But is there a better way to do that?
Just make sure you put that precision ground hardened piece of steel on there and just, tighten them together. It won't do anything to that chamber. Now, as a business, we have to have all the tools. We have to, we have different rules than, Ted at some, dusty range in, Washington. So, we basically like to secure everything. And, with barrel nuts, you really should have the barrel secured. You should put an action wrench in the back of the action. And then you should have a nut, barrel nut wrench on the nut, and that's the only thing that's tightening up. You've already got your headspace set, everything is stabilized. I mean, that's the proper way of doing it. Yes, you can tone it down 10 different steps and get back to banging it with a hammer, whatnot. But as a business, you have to everything you do has to be a home run. So with yours, Rob, I mean, it'll probably work. It probably has been working. But if you had 5 different rifles to do that to, you could see how it would be such a nightmare to just magically get everyone right every time. So in the long run, the more rifles you do, when you invest in the proper tools and procedures, you're way more efficient. Everything is predictable. There's no surprises, and everything's a home run. So, for the people just getting off shooting, do what you need to do to, buy your ammo, do whatever it takes to get out there and start competing and shooting. But if you're going to be doing it, you really are, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of gold, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So if we're we'll shift gears here for a second, because we touched on one thing that I really wanted to cover a couple minutes ago, and that was when shit goes wrong with your rifle. And how to troubleshoot a rifle is one thing, and that's a skill that guys are going to need if they build their own rifle. But another one is going to be, how do you deal with a manufacturer that builds components for a rifle that doesn't necessarily think that their component is the problem?
So I was going to comment, that's shade tree mechanic style of assembly, usually works right up until it doesn't. It's kind of been my experience. We've had some failures in, Mark said it not too long ago, everyone's human. Every shop has a bad day. The volume, especially as things have increased and companies have scaled, you're going to find something that slipped by. And we had one with, a very prominent barrel manufacturer that just completely tanked on us. No rhyme or reason. Actually, I sent it to Mark and he tore it all apart and spent a good chunk of time working it through stem to stern to figure it out. And, Mark's a dude who's been through, I don't know how long Gunsmith school is, but a while, right? Plus how many, 10 years now full-time, building rifles, rebuilding rifles, troubleshooting rifles. answering my dumb questions on the phone all the time. If it takes him that long to figure it out and then finally gets it and is able to weed it out and identify it, I mean, chances that the guy who's the hobbyist, you know what I mean? Like it's you might be at the limit of your knowledge and expertise in what is truly a professional's game, a craftsman's game.
So from a factory standpoint, Matt, I mean, we talk about, what are the benefits of buying a factory rifle is a warranty, right? So how do you guys, what kind of stuff do you guys see come in and are you ever surprised or?
Oh, I mean, Rob, we're constantly surprised and frankly, I mean, the benefit of having a big company behind you, whether it's Ruger or likely anyone else, we've built tens of thousands of rifles or even precision rifles. We've probably seen any problem that any shooter is seeing. And I mean, whether it's just a certain type of ammunition or a certain grain weight of bullet, we've probably seen and heard it, and we have the customer service notes, but it's more often than not that just a phone call, we can get enough information squared away to either get you back up and going. What you're describing to us, really, you might want to check your scope rings. That's not uncommon in the least. And it doesn't speak to any particular class of shooter or experience. When you get mired in some trouble, it's easy to put on blinders and go, oh, my day's ruined and I'm missing the obvious, is it plugged in kind of thing. The other part is, if we are selling a model to the public marketplace, we've put tens of thousands of rounds through many, many guns in vetting all of the parts. So it's not even a matter of just how do I put a barrel on? Do I have headspace gauge and torque wrench? There's all the little pins and punches and springs, all of that minutia that when you're putting something together, even if it's a simple AR sort of thing, you'll be stone cold dead for 2 days while Brownells delivers you this little widget that you didn't even know you needed before. So none of those problems exist. You should be starting with a factory rifle with a good gun, and you know who to call if you're having some trouble.
Have you guys, I'm going to transition to a question we've got, which is talking about different barrel systems and like clamp systems versus, I guess, barrel nuts as well. When you have quick change systems, I think AI's got one, Desert Tech uses a clamping system, and I think bug nuts or bug holes, or somebody's got one out there. But so how do those things work compared to what you guys have seen? And are there any specific advice you'd give to guys looking at those systems?
From just a pure user standpoint, like the DTA, as an example, every single DTA that comes through courses, I make it a point to shoot it, and I just want to shoot it because I've never had one that didn't shoot lights out, like literally never. They all shoot really well, and the barrel swap is really predictable. You can calculate a shift, right? You can calculate your mill shift between barrels with your scope, and it will be repeatable to a really, really acceptable margin of error, in my opinion. So that clamp style system on the DTAs works really well, as well as the MRADs.
I think Desert Tech probably has one of the best systems, just because you're eliminating a barrel shoulder action face joint that doesn't have to be square. It's a very critical joint to have right there, especially when you've got a 28-inch MTU barrel that's sticking out of an action that's just bolted down to a chassis. So you're eliminating that by having about 5 inches of the chassis grab and hold around the barrel outside diameter. So that's one of the benefits. Plus they also have a floating bolt head, which, is just allows things to kind of move and kind of home themselves out. I actually like the Accuracy International system a little bit, how the receiver has a little slot in the bottom. And when you tighten up that side-mounted perpendicular lock bolt, it compresses the threads and actually kind of pulls the barrel into the receiver a little bit more, kind of increasing torque. So, those are both great systems. The bug nut is just just another barrel nut system. I mean, they did a good job with it. It's nice and clean. There's the West Texas Ordnance switch lug, which you've got a double pinned recoil lug, and on the top of the recoil lug, there's a bolt and it pinches. And the way that system works is you just tighten your barrel up hand tight if you're at the range, and then by tightening the top of the recoil lug, it's just grabbing the barrel and preventing it from coming untorqued. So it's not, I'm not a huge fan of that system, but we've got a lot of feedback from people saying that it worked well. And then Ted at American Rifle Company had a really nice design that I'm not sure what the status of it is, but he's got his bar lock, which it basically has two discs that when you tighten the bar lock system, it forces the barrel forward and it forces the action backwards, and it stabilizes that joint. But I'm not sure what this, if they're still making that one, but I'm going to sound like a broken record. I mean, I do still love a conventional shouldered barrel, as far as just, it's simple, it works every time. But I think Desert Tech probably has the best system as far as the floating bolt, the barrel extension. Those we can just send barrels out because there's an extension attached to it, so we can get headspace perfect every time. And, it's like Kalen said, it's repeatable. It's actually very fast. So they've got a good system with that.
We got another question, which is somebody's asking us to compare sourcing multiple Gunsmith turned barrels with factory barrel nut systems. I'm not exactly sure where that's going, but
if you're still watching, man, if you could help us out and rephrase that question, because I read it a little bit ago and I was kind of having trouble with it. So
yeah, I was trying to figure. I'm looking at it, trying to figure out exactly what he's asking. But I guess Lynn, if you're still there, rephrase that and post it back up, and we'll jump on it. But in any event, we can move on to something different, and that is. I guess we've talked a lot about barrel nuts, right? And barrel nut systems, which is probably the heart of these things. But we're also looking at magazines, and we're looking at chassis setups and how stocks interface with guns. There's lots of critical joints, critically fit components in these guns. So when we talked about what considerations guys should be making, should be considered, what things guys should be considering is. What else should we be thinking about in terms of, magazines? Guys are going to be hunting with guns. Do they need magazines in their guns? When guys are looking at actions,
Is there any aftermarket support? If you buy, let's say, a Tikka T3 rifle, can you get a different stock for it? Are there magazines available? Can you put come to the zero MOA scope base, can you put a 20 or 30 or 40 on there? There's a different bolt handle options. So, I think that, manufacturers on a large scale that align themselves to have aftermarket support tend to be a lot more successful, than, really small nuanced companies that this is the configuration. If you don't like it, too bad. We've done everything right. I mean, it's, even if it is a great configuration, I think people just want options. They want to be able to, tinker and play and do what they want with it. So.
I like to tell people to test mags a lot, especially with that, these higher capacity, or you see in competition a lot now. I even carry one on my work kit, like the extensions that go on the bottom of the AI mags. That spring tension on a fully loaded mag, and as it starts to come undone, can actually have an accuracy effect on your rifle. So, it's super magnified on gas guns, like big bore gas guns, but you can see it on bolt guns as well. So I like to, same way you would number your pistol or your carbine mags, number your mags and kind of test which ones, provide the best accuracy in that bolt lockup, especially on some, kind of more seasoned issued guns. I'd definitely check that out.
We see a lot of magazine failures. I mean, there's so many things that, there's so many different cartridges. For example, Accuracy International has their AICS 308 magazine. Well, there's a fairly large amount of taper on the feed lips, to match a 308 cartridge. Well, if you're shooting a 6.5 Creedmoor, which only has, 10 thousandths or less of body taper, they don't really fit that great without some tweaking and stuff. So, I mean, usually magazines cause a lot of heartache with all these, Wildcat cartridges and stuff like that. And, if you're shooting a 308, 243, stuff like that, they're going to work pretty good. But a lot of the new modern cartridges with straighter bodies, sharper shoulder angles, longer necks will have problems with internal box mags, feeding properly, like the internal, hinge floor plates, and also just running standard, magazines can be problematic at times. Then they get dirty, springs wear out.
Even like magazine fitment and presentation, every bottom metal is different. Unless the RPR, obviously that's not right. So that's a set dimension. But like if you have an MPA chassis, a Gunworks chassis, a KRG chassis, all of those dimensions and presentation angles of those magazines can change and can be different from platform to platform. And just, learning what I learned at Magpul about magazine design and function and reliability, it's really just 1 degree of variation can cause lots of problems. So like Alex said, you got to test your stuff in all of those different platforms if you're going to be running different stocks and interchanging magazines with them.
So how can guys, at a practical level, how do guys deal with magazine and feeding issues? I think, Mark, we were talking yesterday a little bit about, like, sometimes you might actually have to add some material to a mag catch to make things work properly.
Right. The biggest thing we see with, Company X's chassis and Company Y's barreled action is the distance from the, recoil lug to the action screws and the magazine well of the action might be different on the chassis. So the magazine well might actually not line up perfectly. So the magazine goes in and it might hit, on the back side of the action, so there's a lot of issues with just the alignment of the magazine well of the chassis with the action. Also, we have to do a lot of TIG welding where we will build up the magazine latch to present the magazine higher so it's got, proper cartridge presentation to the bolt for feeding. But then, like with the Magpul magazines, I like those magazines. The ICS ones are nice. They typically work well, and they're only like $35, but because they're polymer, they're thicker up top. So sometimes you actually have to cut material off of your magazine latch to get it to lock up in there. So when you do that, you're kind of dedicating that rifle to run Magpul magazines, because now other style magazines and steel ones, they actually sit lower now, and it might work, but do you want things to work 100% every time, or do you want it to just kind of work in the comfort of your own home? Because just stuff happens. You get in the field, you get dirty, just stuff happens. So there's a lot of games to play with that, but like everybody said, you just got to know your gear and try it, and build confidence with it. And that's why it's so important to go out there and shoot in good weather, bad weather. Just you're really proving out yourself and your equipment. Getting confidence in it.
Like when we look at factory rifles like the RPR, we start looking at the aftermarket support, and we start seeing, companies making things like mag catches and mag latches, bolt handles. How important is it for guys to have access to those parts? And I guess, do guys outgrow, how do you know when you outgrow something like an RPR, Matt? And what do you do?
Well, it's hard to outgrow. Well, that's not fair. Certainly, as you shoot more, you identify what it is you want or need more.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Mark said earlier, there's a pretty normal set of upgrades people will do when they know they want to start tweaking and twisting. You're going to change the stock because it's easy, you can. It's an AR pistol grip. It's easy, you can. Bolt knobs, of course, find a bolt knob shape that you like. It's really when you start wanting different calibers, radically different configurations. Instead of shooting off a bench and a bipod, I'm going to start shooting hanging from a tree with my only point of contact being a tripod 30 feet down, and it's this crazy stuff. But you at least have a good reason for wanting to do more. And that's all it takes for me. If you have a reason, by all means, the platform you're shooting today isn't cutting it, then it makes a lot of sense. Otherwise, man, it's nice to know that you can go buy something and it's gonna fit. And and for all the guys who will piecemeal something together, as long as you're patient and enjoy the minutia, that's a great way to do it. You'll have a lot of fun. But if you just want to go shoot, it's nice to put things together and have them work.
Yeah, and this sort of reminds me of a conversation I overheard between, I think it was between Kalen and Alex and Rudy on Kalen's podcast that I was listening to on one of my hikes, where I think Alex was talking about the importance of using the gear that you're, sort of the gear that you're given, and not starting out with real high performance equipment, so that you can really not only appreciate it, but you can learn what right feels like before you start upgrading stuff. Right, Alex?
Yeah, there's also just a lot of personal preference. I mean, like, I jokingly referred to or kind of compared it to race cars, but race car drivers are extraordinarily particular in how their different things are set up. I mean, you find somebody who's at the high end of whatever they do, and they have their own particular way of doing things. And sort of, you don't know that when you start, right? You only know that once you've come up against, certain things. Like I can tell you, Kalen, you had a funny quote the other day about liking a little bit of a cant in your butt plate, right? And I'm right there with you in that AX chassis. It fits that shoulder pocket nice. And when I was coming up and I was at SOTG, we used to have to shoot both shoulders. And then we didn't really do it for a while. Kind of got away from it, and I had it set. And we ran Mammoth one year, and that happened. They required us to shoot from the alternate shoulder, and all of a sudden I realized that my gun was set up only for my primary side, and I was like climbing over it.
Yeah, that's a relative. That's a great point. You got to test all that stuff out, and the options that you can have on modern chassis systems today are it's endless. I mean, you can pretty much move and adjust everything depending on what model it is that you pick. But yeah, there are little peculiarities that come along, and you do see that crowd of shooter that goes and they go, all right, I'm going to go straight to the precision rifle blog, and I'm just going to buy everything that the pros use, and then we'll sort it out later. And there's good things with that and bad things with that. And with that, though, you need to just understand what it is that you like, what it is that you like. Some people don't like the feel of a chassis system. Some people would rather feel a more traditional rifle stock. They feel more comfortable with that. Like there's some people that, like, I really enjoy KMW, the Terry Sentinel stock. There's people out there that can't stand that thing. They can't shoot it really well. So a lot of that's personal preference, and you just got to encourage people to go out and try different things, see different things, ask people to let them shoot your gun or let you shoot their gun. And you just have to make your mind up. Just like Alex said, everybody's got their little peculiarities with that stuff.
I can't tell you how many classes I've
some
taught
questions. Sorry, Alex, go ahead.
I was saying, I can't tell you how many classes I've taught where, the guy shows up and he's like, I just threw this together for the class because I really wanted to take the class, only to realize that he hates everything about what he just bought and brought to the line. And that had he known all the stuff he learned at the class before he went and bought a bunch of stuff, he probably would have spent less money or spent that same amount of money, more wisely in something that either worked better for him in his application or that he actually liked better. And like I said, I can't tell you how many times I've seen that.
Lots.
We spent a lot of time.
So we got a bunch of questions stacked up here, and I know we're about an hour. Sorry, I think my internet is sort of freaking out a little bit here, but I'm a little bit behind everybody. So, but what I do want to do is we're just past an hour, and I want to get to some of the questions and make sure everybody got about 100. Get some people watching here, so I want to make sure we get these questions answered. So I'm going to start going down this list and throw these out to you guys. And one of the things that's coming up is Remage versus Savage barrellet systems versus custom barrellet systems. Guys are curious if there's anything that they should be aware of or consider when they're looking at those three systems or more?
I'd say, if you've got some tools and you're comfortable working on them, give the barrel nut system a shot, just because, it is a little bit more user friendly as far as, companies can send them out, and you can save some money. So, start with that, but also if you can afford to be without your rifle for a little bit, it's the best routes to send your rifle in, to have a barrel fitted up, have a nice shoulder barrel. There's just nothing you need to worry about besides shooting and fundamentals. You're not wondering if your headspace is off or the barrel nut came loose or something like that. So I've always found that, the less people have to worry about their equipment, the better they can perform, just as a shooter.
Anyone else want to jump in on that one?
Mark pretty much nailed that.
Yeah, I would echo Mark's comments completely. Like, as a shooter, I don't want to think about the 10 million things that might be going wrong. I just want to focus on the task at hand. So knowing that it's going to do what I want it to do or need it to do there's a human performance aspect to shooting that a lot of people kind of overlook, sort of like a performance anxiety, so to speak. And if you're thinking about anything else besides what you need to do right then, mindful behind the rifle, as it were, Kalen, you're already right. You're already giving up, brain power, or to use a super term du jour like bandwidth, on something that doesn't really or isn't going to help you get what you need to get done. So I like to kind of like leave all those variables door won't go out.
Yeah, for me, man, when I miss targets, I want to know beyond a shadow of a doubt that the only reason that I missed that target was a result of my improper application of fundamentals, a bad wind call, or something else that I'm responsible for. I don't even want to have to think, was that my rifle zero, or, no. That's the fastest way to take you out of that performance that Alex is just talking about. It's the fastest way to get your brain completely gone and lose focus on what's happening right now.
Somebody's asking about stock materials, aluminum versus carbon stocks versus plastic stocks. I guess probably overmolded is what he's talking about. So you guys have preferences if you were building your own rifles, or if you're going to buy an off-the-shelf rifle, what you'd be looking for in a stock?
My favorite, my go-to chassis system. Yeah, my favorite is KRGs. KRG for like a full featured chassis, it's the KRG Whiskey 3.
Yeah, they've got a good one. I mean, there's so many.
What is it that you like about that thing, then?
So the Whiskey 3 it's really adjustable. And just for me, it just fits well. Like when I connect myself to the rifle with the KRG chassis, it's just like, it's a good fit, right? I like it. And if I'm not shooting a chassis gun, I'm a big fan of Gunworks, their verdict stock, for a more like, that's kind of like a blend between a chassis and a traditional rifle stock.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of capabilities with that system. They can get it in carbon fiber fill to keep the weight way down, or you can put a glass fill in there to keep the weight up for a more competitive focus. So you got to find a stock that fits well for you. And I don't really think that material matters anymore. Like, it really doesn't matter anymore. So like the Magpul 700 Pro, awesome chassis, largely made out of polymer. Like, I don't feel comfortable with Axe International's stock. It just doesn't fit me well. And I don't like it. So it's all personal preference, man. That's just my point, though, my opinion.
I agree with the personal preference thing. I mean, I've had a KRG Whiskey 3. still have it. I've got a Manners T4 Alpha. And then once I got behind the AX chassis, I was like, it just felt like home. I mean, that, and, you know, whenever I mount like a, you know, Macmillan A3, you know, I'm like, all right, we're home now, you know, but that there's something to commonality too. So like once I found the one that I liked, all my guns are built on the same thing. So when I jump from one to the next, there isn't a major disruption in that interface, that feeling of interface between me and the rifle.
Hey Matt, when you got, I'm curious from a manufacturer standpoint, you deal with a lot of different rifles, and I'm curious what the breakdown is between guys that are buying, you know, rifles versus stocks versus chassis sort of systems with the RPR.
Yeah, I mean, the RPR is a different, it's kind of a hybrid in here. It's not bedded in a traditional way like a Remington 700. It's not bolted into a chassis really the same way, you know, our receiver halves are clamping the receiver too. So we have an inline recoil path. At the end of the day, we've never seen where material matters. It comes more into every time you pull the trigger, are all the components in the same place every shot? So if it's stiff, rigid, well bedded, you can have good performance, whether it's a cold piece of metal in your hands or a softer piece of plastic.
You got to consider though that, you know, chassis builds typically take a lot less time for a manufacturer to make. So I mean, you know, you might be waiting 6 months for like a Manners composite stock if you custom order something with all your specifications. But, you know, you could call up Masterpiece Arms, KRG, you know, a lot of, you know, MDT, and people have them in stock ready to go. So, I mean, the utility plus the availability is, you know, is pretty important. And with a lot of these topics, it's kind of like, is the tail wagging the dog or the dog wagging the tail? You know, when all these manufacturers are able to build products, have them on the shelf and stock them ready to go, is that driving, you know, trends in the market, or is it the features and the benefits that those products offer driving, you know, their popularity? So, you know, just the fact that they're so available, you know, is something to be said.
And what about bedding? And, you know, somebody's asking a question about the role of bedding these days. When you look at a lot of, especially chassis manufacturers, are saying, you know, we hold such tight tolerances with our bedding, and we know what the action is going to do. So you don't have to worry about you know, bedding this thing yourself, custom bedding. What's your guys' experience with custom bedding?
Well, it's expensive. It's labor intensive. I mean, it's not something that we love to do. You know, we don't wake up in the morning just, you know, talking about the bedding jobs we have, but, you know, you're creating, for the most part, a perfect mold for that action. So the benefit is it's going to be the most stress-free option available. You know, it's going to fit everything the best. And in my opinion, the purpose of bedding is allowed the rifle to move, but go back to the same exact spot it was, you know, before the shot. Because, you know, you can see high-speed videos of, you know, rifles. I mean, the barrel's wobbling all over, the scope is, you know, moving all over. Things are going to move. So your bedding should allow it to come back to the same spot. If you have a chassis that has some type of conflict where it's pinching or it's under stress, it's not going to necessarily let the action get back to the same exact spot that it was. Plus, with a lot of aluminum chassis, we see the action screws actually come loose a lot more than bedded stocks. And we haven't quite figured it out, but I know that that's something you need to keep an eye on more with chassis builds. So bedding is more expensive. It's, you know, you're adding extra time. You're pretty much permanently marrying that exact serial number action to that stock. I mean, there's a small chance that another, you know, serial number of the same make and model will fit in there, but you're just guessing at that point. But we've seen a lot of success from non-bedded chassis to where it's hard for us to look someone in the eye and say, if you're not bedding it, you're wrong. I mean, because there's a lot of really good shooting chassis that, you know, hey, that's great, you know. But as a business, you want every single rifle to be, you know, bedding would be the way to go. But it's still a pretty safe bet to try not bedding first.
It's a little geeky, but I've noticed on some chassis and some actions where you've got at the tang, that can be a special area of frustration for people. They might not even know about or notice if the tang doesn't fit the chassis the right way, it'll put pressure. I think I called it like a diving board sort of effect, where you can sink the tang of an action into a chassis. So that's something that guys need to be aware of as well. Does that have an effect on accuracy, and how can you tell if that's going to be a problem?
Right. You can do a stress test. The easiest way to do it is to set your barreled action in the chassis. And you can start by just torquing both action screws. I would start with the front, and then torque the rear, and then just loosen up the front action screw. If the whole barreled action starts to rise up when you loosen the front, you know that there's stress in the system. The whole purpose of bedding is to eliminate stress. So another note on the tang is you want to make sure that the rear tang isn't acting like a second recoil lug. So if the back tang of your action is actually pressing up against the pocket that the chassis has for it, I mean, that could be a big problem right there as well. As material expands and contrasts, I mean, that'll be an issue. But yeah, it's sometimes we'll just bed the rear tang only, and that'll work out pretty well.
We noticed
that we progressed beyond the soda can shim trick on on eliminating some of that tension. There used to be too, like, I know a lot of guys when they sit down, they'll go through the torque specs, especially a lot of guns that get issued out. You go to torque check it and Loctite everything down that kind of once a year, and you'll go to torque action screws. And what we'll typically recommend is sort of starting at a lower poundage on that rear action screw, and sort of like shooting it and tightening it until we find sort of that sweet spot that gun likes in some of those sort of mass-produced guns.
Yeah, we during the development of the Hunter 700 stock, we wanted to make sure that because we did have a lot of people ask about skin bedding, and we tried that and we could not find any perceptible change in accuracy from an action that was in a standard Hunter 700 and then an action that was in a bedded Hunter 700. You couldn't find it. Now with the torque specs, like Alex was saying, we did find with that the Hunter 700 that you could tune your torque specs to accuracy with the rifle. So what we would do is just say, all right, we're going to start at 50, tighten it, 50 inch-pounds, shoot a group, loosen it, tighten it to 55, and so on and so forth, all the way up to 65. And depending on the action, you could see a perceptible change in accuracy with different torque settings. Is that something that you've ever experienced, Mark?
Yeah, I haven't done a test like that, but we've had customers where they, will recommend doing that, and they found sweet spots for them. And another thing about, chassis is the two typical designs you'll see is like a V-block style, like KRG, an Accuracy International chassis system. And then there's also just a series of scalloped cuts, kind of like what Masterpiece Arms has, or, McCree. And like the KRG V-block style, same as Accuracy International, is going to be a lot more forgiving and a lot more tolerant to different actions, especially Remington 700s. If they're not very round, if they're not very straight, that V-block is going to work better than something like a series of small radius cuts that are supposed to touch the action at multiple points. So but those types of chassis work better with some custom actions because they're more consistent and stuff. So there's just so many little things like this that people putting stuff together might not notice, but rifle builders are people that see them all the time. We're the last one standing without a chair when the music stops if something doesn't go right. So we have to figure this stuff out and inform the customers. So there's a lot that goes to it.
So you've got issues of not only performance and accuracy, but there's also reliability. And when you can bind up an action and try to figure out what's binding the action up. If you're over tightened, if you're torqued, there's lots of things that are going on in these rifles. But I guess what I need to do now is sort of start closing this thing down. We've got a few minutes left, and what I want to do is give everybody an opportunity to sort of give me your closing thoughts on build versus buy, and also I want to make sure everybody has a chance to talk about their programs and anything that they're working on as well at the moment. So let me start with Kalen.
Thanks, man. So the build versus buy, it's just, as you guys can see, man, it's literally mountains of information, and there's a lot to sift through. And if you're in question and you got something that's like really specific and you just don't really understand, reach out to anybody here. Like, go to a professional gun builder, go to somebody like Mark, talk to them, like use that resource because it's there. And just weigh out your options, figure out what your end mission is, figure out what your end goal is, and then go backwards from there and figure out what is it that you want. And that sometimes is a lot easier than to go, all right, well, I've just got this giant pile of parts and now we got to figure out what to do with it and where we want to go. Okay, well, I have this, and now this is the direction this what I just made is going to direct me because that's how it was built. So we just so wrapping this up for Modern Day Sniper, I run Modern Day Sniper, moderndaySniper.com, and what is really cool is just in the irony, we just released online training with the Circle of Components. And so basically all that is 5.5 hours of content talking about putting all of this stuff together. So that you can find on, you can find that at moderndaysniper.com as well. So I appreciate it, Rob. Thanks, man. This was awesome. I appreciate the opportunity. So, and I love having conversations with all these guys. Matt, you're the only one that I haven't met yet, dude. So hopefully we can bump into each other soon.
Yeah, and I'll just say that everybody on this call, like Kalen and Alex, are guys that I will call like at very odd times and ask very strange questions and get very, very good answers, which I really do appreciate. And I hope that, for me to do my job, having guys like that around are essential. And I feel privileged to have everybody, to have that. So what Kalen is saying is like, you kind of need a gun daddy at some point if you're going to build a rifle. So use Facebook, use whatever you can, and find somebody. Go to a course, and then latch on to one of the instructors, and that's your guy. So, Alex, you wanna take us home on your side of things?
Yeah, buy versus build. I sit squarely and firmly in the buy camp. I don't enjoy. I don't enjoy wrenching on guns besides setting them up for me. I mean, even then it's kind of like a task that I need to do. It's like PCCs and PCIs, like get it done so I can get to the work. I don't want to think about it. I literally want to pull it out of the box, know that I've done everything setup wise to make sure it's good, but load it up and go out and do work with it. So for that level of confidence in my rifles and in the parts, the level of time that I can dedicate to other things, it's way more important for me to have that trust and confidence in the platform when it comes out of the box. So for those reasons, I sit firmly in the buy camp. Full disclosure, I don't let anybody but Mark touch my guns. That's just, the dude just is he's otherworldly in his attention to detail with them, and what I've been able to do with those guns in my hands, it's unreal. So firmly in the buy camp. When it comes to who we are, so you can find us at ridgelineShooting.com. Our company, Ridgeline Defense, owns and operates in partnership with Team O'Neill Rally School, a 700+ acre facility in northern New Hampshire that we've purpose built and kind of carved out of a mountain to be able to provide the best backdrop for our purpose-built curriculum. Rudy, who's not here tonight, is kind of the lead precision rifle instructor for us. He's known Kalen for quite some time, and Kalen and I and Rudy and Phil, we jokingly kind of call each other the sister companies on other sides of the country. So what I've found is that when you get so many people that are switched on enough, doing the same things, they start typically finding some of the same conclusions. And so having that sounding board, like you said, Rob, is important to see if what you're finding is an anomaly or if it is a trend that not just you are seeing. But yeah, you can find us at ridgelineShooting.com and on all the social media stuff at Ridgeline Defense.
Good deal. Matt, what do you think, man? Should guys build their own custom rifles or not?
You know, I really hadn't decided here until we got all the way through this panel, but I think I'm going to land in the buy camp here. No, you know, it's important to get out and shoot. So I don't really care if you want to borrow to start. Get out and shoot. Know what it is you want. You know, the Ruger Precision Rifle in particular comes with features so you can go out and shoot and enjoy it now. And it's easy to do that, but I'm just happy if you get out and shoot, you'll know what to buy, you'll know what you want, do a whole lot more shooting. We'll take that every day.
Is there anything coming down the pike from Ruger that you want to break any news right now? Or anything?
I will get broken if I break any news. No, we're always working on new stuff. We're publicly traded, so it's about as far as I can ever get. But you can learn everything about what we do when we do it at Ruger.com. We're glad to have you. Thank you for having me on this.
Oh, thank you, Matt. I appreciate it, man. Mark, what's your take us out?
No, I agree with Matt. I mean, regardless, you know, the shooting industry is such a great industry to be in. I mean, I couldn't imagine someone going to a range where they have open range day and there's, you know, precision rifle based shooting going on where someone's not willing to let you try their gear, willing to help you troubleshoot any issues you're having, willing to share equipment, bags, range finders. Here, try this ammo if it's not working. I mean, it's such a great industry to be in. So, but I mean, you know, it doesn't matter if people build or buy, just the fact that they're getting involved, you know, benefits all of us here. So I'm a big fan of, obviously, you know, when people buy custom rifles, but the real benefit is, you know, they could possibly save money in the long run by making sure their configuration is right from the get-go. There's not going to be any conflicts. Our job is to help them with our experience and help them walk through this whole process, because getting into it, it's, you know, there's so many scopes and calibers and, you know, just all these different things that have to wade through. So our job is to help them through that. And, you know, the benefit of, you know, buying a custom rifle is if anything goes wrong, we will handle it directly. You know, you're not having to call these manufacturers and deal with stuff. You know, you're on our team. You know, you're basically kind of like, you know, buying a information subscription through us, you know, when you're our customer. So, you know, but either way, we're just happy to see people out there. You know, it's a great sport. It's growing big time. I mean, we've, you know, 6.5 Creedmoor, for whatever reason, that cartridge has been taken off like crazy. I mean, we probably do 10-to-1 6.5 Creedmoors versus other stuff. So don't worry, Alex, the 308 is actually like number 2 behind it. So, you know, the 308 is not going anywhere. But as far as, you know, we've got 7 full-time employees here. You know, we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary of being full-time. We just love doing this. We love to be part of this industry. We all love to shoot. I mean, I might not be, you know, burning down the PRS scene, but you know, we just love to be a part of this industry. So we're always coming out with new tools, and we're always pushing our rifles to the limit and just working on just shooting, you know, developments. Like we just had Cal Zant at Precision Rifle Blog publish a lot of our work on bullet jump. And, you know, we're just curious. We just want to know why. We just dig down until we can find some type of answer and just keep going. So we just love what we do here. We got the best customers.
Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate all of you guys spending, geez, we just coming up on an hour and a half of bullshitting about precision guns, which has been pretty cool. And it's seriously a privilege to have all of you join me for this conversation. And I should also, Kalen is way too, I don't know, too much of a gentleman to plug it, but make sure you check out his stuff on the Modern Day Sniper, some good content over there, as well as he's also partnered with us on RECOILtv. So you can get a bunch of his videos and stuff like that over on RECOILtv as well. You guys, I really do appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you out there. Alex, I'll hopefully see you up in New Hampshire this summer at the PRS New England match, which you're running that thing, right?
Yep. So it's still on. We worked out deconflicted with PRS. Yeah, we're not scared of no COVID. So we're it's the end of July, so it's the last weekend in July. It's pretty unique. It's probably one of the fewer matches on the East Coast that it's not that's not flat range. I think that would be the opposite description of what we have. You know, we're shooting a lot of cross compartment stuff, cross valley, and then there might be a couple surprise stages coming up this year too. So it's super scenic. It's a really cool spot to shoot. We truck in from the assembly area And, guys just love to have a good time there. Last year was our first time kind of running it solo. We kind of inherited it on the fly the first year we were involved in 2018. And then this year we've got a lot of stuff on refinement side. So spending a lot of time on, making sure that we've got, it's going to be catered. So you get lunches there every day. There'll be a shooter's social on Saturday night. We've got a lot of like local companies that'll come out, demonstrate the wares, and let you guys kind of have open range time with that. So should be a really good time. And it's the perfect time of year to be up in northern New Hampshire. So
right on. All right. Hey guys, again, thank you very much. And we're going to call it at this point at 8:31. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Rob.
Get it.
Guys.
Cheers.